Welcome to the Threat Insight Analysis on the United States and Iran War. This video forms part of our new series, which aims to answer how society arrived at a particular situation at a specific moment in time. We call this series, How Did We Get Here? The United States and Iran War is the first topic in this series. You are welcome to contact us and submit ideas for other topics which you would like us to research and engage with. This video is part 4 of 6 and deals with the United States military power, its strategic ambiguity, and the limits of coercion. If you have not yet viewed the preceding videos on this topic, we strongly encourage you to do so and view them in sequence to ensure maximum benefit. The possibility of United States success in the current war against Iran depends first on how success is defined. If success means damaging Iran's nuclear facilities, missile infrastructure, air defences, naval assets and command nodes, then the United States is likely to achieve measurable military effects. American air and naval superiority, long-range strike capacity, intelligence integration with Israel, and the ability to sustain regional pressure give Washington a significant operational advantage. Historical experience supports this conclusion. In the 1991 Gulf War, the United States demonstrated that it could dismantle an adversary's conventional military capacity quickly when operating with overwhelming technological superiority. In 2003, it again showed that it could defeat a state's regular armed forces and remove a regime from power. The military question, however, is not the decisive question. But Iran also learned from these conflicts and implemented its Mosaic defense doctrine, through which it decentralized command and dispersed its defense and attack capabilities. The real question is whether the United States can convert military destruction into a durable political outcome. Here, the American historical record is much less favorable. Vietnam showed that tactical and operational superiority cannot compensate for an unclear political end state, weak domestic consensus, and an adversary able to absorb punishment while extending the conflict. Iraq showed that regime removal can be easier than regime replacement, and that the destruction of state authority can create insurgency, fragmentation, and regional spillover, making the immediate problem even worse. Afghanistan showed that even a long military campaign, backed by enormous financial and technological resources, may fail when the political order being built lacks sufficient legitimacy and when the adversary can wait out American political patience. These parallels matter because Iran is larger, more populous, more historically cohesive, more strategically networked, and more nationally conscious than many previous targets of United States military campaigns. Militaristically, Iran has shown resilience in its replenishment of armament, its accuracy in identifying and hitting strategic targets, and its ability to tip the cost of the war in its favour. The current United States strategy appears to combine coercive punishment, containment, interdiction, and negotiated leverage. It is not a clean regime change strategy, yet it contains regime change language and leadership targeting that make Iran interpret it as existential. It is not a limited nuclear denial operation because strikes, blockades, and pressure on the Strait of Hormuz have widened the campaign beyond the nuclear file. It is also not a stable diplomatic strategy because the credibility of future negotiation is weakened by Iran's memory of the United States' withdrawal from the 2015 nuclear agreement. The result is strategic ambiguity. Washington may intend to force Iran to accept limits, but Tehran will most likely believe that accepting limits will only invite the next demand. This creates the classic coercion problem. The stronger party can impose pain, but it cannot easily persuade the weaker party that compliance will end the punishment. The coercion idea is clearly articulated in the statements that come from Tehran. The apparent lack of clear United States strategic objectives is therefore not a secondary issue. It is central to the campaign's likely effectiveness. Military force can punish, delay, and degrade, but it cannot coerce effectively unless the adversary understands what specific action will stop the pressure. If Iran believes the real objective is not nuclear limitation, but regime weakening, regime change, or strategic submission, then resistance becomes rational even under heavy punishment. Ambiguity also blurs the difference between nuclear denial, deterrence restoration, punishment, containment, and regime change pressure. These are not interchangeable goals. A campaign designed to delay enrichment requires different tools from a campaign designed to collapse proxy networks, and both differ from a campaign intended to force political transformation inside Iran. From a strategic perspective, unclear objectives reduce the probability of decisive success because they allow Iran to define survival as victory. Tehran does not need to defeat the United States in a conventional contest. It needs to preserve the state, retain retaliatory capacity, keep domestic control, and show that American strikes cannot impose political surrender. The less clearly Washington defines the end state, the easier it becomes for Iran to claim that endurance itself is strategic success. This also complicates alliance management. Israel, Gulf partners, European governments, and domestic political actors in Washington may each read the campaign differently. Some may prioritize nuclear denial, others deterrence restoration, others regime collapse, and others de-escalation. Without a single organizing objective, tactical cooperation can mask strategic divergence. From a tactical perspective, the United States may still perform effectively at the target level. It can strike facilities, intercept drones and missiles, move naval forces, protect some bases, and degrade specific capabilities. Tactical competence, however, is not the same as strategic coherence. Destroying a radar site, missile launcher, logistics hub, or command node matters only if it contributes to a defined political end state. Without that end state, tactical success risks becoming episodic punishment rather than cumulative strategic progress. Iran benefits from this because it can absorb damage, retaliate selectively, shift pressure to regional assets, and portray each surviving phase of the conflict as proof that American power cannot force submission. The historical parallels are direct. Vietnam showed how the United States could win engagements while failing to translate firepower into political compliance, because the objective shifted between containment, credibility, stabilization, and coercion. Iraq showed that a rapid tactical victory and regime removal did not guarantee a viable political settlement. Afghanistan showed that tactical pressure against armed networks could continue for years without producing a legitimate and durable political order. These cases do not mean Iran is identical to Vietnam, Iraq, or Afghanistan. They show a recurring American vulnerability. When the political end state is unclear, tactical victories accumulate without resolving the war. In the Iran case, that problem is sharper because Iran has state capacity, national identity, missile reach, proxy depth, cyber tools, maritime disruption options, and external support from Russia and China. This is where the international relations context becomes decisive. The United States is no longer operating in the unipolar moment that followed the Cold War. Russia and China cannot necessarily save Iran, but they can complicate American success by providing diplomatic cover, alternative economic channels, technology flows, military cooperation, and political legitimacy for an anti-Western narrative. The current campaign therefore unfolds in a multipolar environment in which American military power possibly remains unmatched in direct strike capacity. I say possibly unmatched, as we are now seeing the emergence of a new battlefield dynamic. Ukraine was the first modern war where the efficiency of highly cost-effective and easy-to-replace drone capability was demonstrated against a modern, well-equipped and potentially superior opponent. War resilience is dominated by capital availability, which drives political will and in turn empowers the military. But even more importantly, American political control over the outcomes is weaker than it was in the 1990s. The historical parallel is partly the Suez Crisis of 1956. A military operation may achieve immediate tactical objectives while still exposing the limits of an older power structure when the wider international environment no longer accepts its authority unquestioningly. The Trump administration's abandonment of diplomacy and the way in which historical alliances and partners are treated makes both tactical and political support less likely. We clearly see this play out with the Trump administration expressing its frustration with NATO and other independent NATO nations. We are now also seeing that the United States seems to be losing its resolve, blaming Israel for drawing it into the war and for meddling in the peace negotiations. The domestic political environment in the United States also constrains success. The American public has repeatedly shown reluctance toward open-ended Middle Eastern wars, especially after Iraq and Afghanistan. Current reporting indicates renewed congressional debate over war powers, public concern about escalation, and political anxiety over fuel prices, service member casualties, and the possibility of another prolonged conflict. This matters because Iran does not need to defeat the United States militarily in order to frustrate its strategy. It only needs to survive, impose costs, raise regional and economic pressure, and wait for the American political coalition behind the war to weaken. This is the central lesson of asymmetric endurance. The weaker actor wins if it prevents the stronger actor from achieving a politically acceptable conclusion. There is also a difference between degrading Iran and defeating Iran. The United States can degrade Iran's visible military infrastructure, but Iran's power is not limited to fixed installations. It rests on dispersed missile capabilities, underground facilities, technical expertise, ideological networks, proxy relationships, maritime disruption capacity, cyber reach, and the political memory of foreign intervention. Destroying a facility may delay a program. It does not destroy the knowledge needed to rebuild it. Killing leaders may disrupt command. It may also harden succession around more militant actors. Sanctions may weaken the economy. They may also strengthen the regime's siege narrative and establish corridors of trade over which the West has little to no control. The historical parallel is the post-1991 containment of Iraq, where American power constrained a hostile regime for years, but did not produce a stable political settlement. In Iran's case, containment may be even more difficult because Iran has greater strategic depth, more diversified partnerships, and stronger instruments of regional retaliation. The forecast must therefore distinguish between operational damage, operational success, and strategic success. Operational success remains possible, but is proving less decisive than anticipated. The United States can still inflict serious damage on Iranian military, nuclear, naval, energy, and economic targets, but physical destruction has not automatically translated into coercive leverage. Iran's dispersed infrastructure, underground facilities, mobile missile systems, proxy networks, cyber capacity, maritime disruption options, and institutional memory of sanctions and war mean that the system is designed to absorb pressure rather than collapse under it. The conflict is therefore shifting from a United States-led punishment campaign into a contest over tempo, endurance, resilience, and political cost. This does not mean that the United States is losing militarily. It means that the translation mechanism between military damage and political effect is weaker than Washington may have expected. Iran appears to be contesting the initiative rather than merely absorbing punishment. If Iranian or Iran-aligned strikes continue to damage United States infrastructure, bases, logistics, or partner assets across the Middle East with precision, then Tehran is shaping the cost structure of the war even while suffering strikes at home. In that environment, the United States may retain escalation dominance at the level of conventional force, but Iran can still influence the operational rhythm by widening the battlefield, threatening distributed assets, and forcing Washington to adapt reactively. It may even frustrate the Trump administration, forcing it to commit to a ground offensive which favors Iran and not the United States. The most probable outcome is therefore not a decisive American victory in the classical sense, but a coercive stalemate in which both sides claim partial success, while neither secures the political outcome it wants. The United States may claim success if it can demonstrate destroyed targets, disrupted enrichment, reduced missile capacity, or a ceasefire on favourable terms. Iran may claim success if the regime survives, the state remains intact, retaliatory capacity remains credible, and foreign pressure can be portrayed as another failed attempt to subdue Iran. The more Iran demonstrates resilience and precision retaliation, the more the war becomes a contest over endurance rather than destruction. That is precisely why the likely endpoint is not surrender, but an unstable settlement in which the underlying conflict is deferred, Iran becomes more militarized and more dependent on Russia and China, and the United States is left managing escalation rather than decisively controlling it. In this regard, the United States and Israel are exposed and in a less favorable position than before the war. It also instills a long-term instability across the Middle East. This is the end of part 4. If this briefing helped you read the signs a little earlier and see the road a little more clearly, give us a like and click the bell icon so that you are informed when we post new risk assessments, situational reports, and socio-economic or political reviews. If you want to find out how Threat Insight can assist your organisation with real-time and credible risk intelligence to help you navigate the complexity of the present instability, please reach out to our business development team who is eager to assist.